Des move. Please don't miss out. Smash that subscribe button and you could be our next giveaway winner.
Hey, it's your boy Dead Smooth. I got another reaction video for you today. But first, smash that subscribe button and hit that notification bell. What's up, reaction family? I got this video today by Hood War Chronicles. The name of the video is The Chamber Brothers Were Much Worse Than New Jack City Made You Think. Hey man, let's see what they talking about. See, I'm from the city of Detroit. I know all about the Chamber Brothers, man. And yes, indeed, the movie New Jack City was about the Chamber Brothers, man. Let's check it out.
You say their names, say Chambers looking for you, hey, they gone, they running, they be scared.
I remember these news clips.
They will kill you in a minute with no hesitation.
In many places, the crack trade has transformed small-time hoodlums into big-time entrepreneurs.
So we was looking at movies,
among the most remarkable
videos,
examples is the notorious Chambers Brothers gang of Detroit. Authorities say the Chambers Brothers who made this home video didn't even bother to count the $1 bills because it took too long.
Should we throw these ones away, man, since we got $500,000?
Well, I tell you what we can do. We can give it to the poor.
New Jack City is no doubt a cult classic, with plenty of praise and memorable characters, especially Wesley Snipes killing it as Nino Brown.
Sit your $5 down before I make change.
But as intense as the movie was, it barely scratched the surface. The real guys it was based on, the Chamber Brothers, were way more ruthless and wild than what the film showed.
They had couriers deliver the drugs to gang salesmen at more than 500 crack houses. They used violence and intimidation to discourage competitors and to keep gang members in line.
Let's find out why. The Chambers Brothers weren't just your average street hustlers, these dudes were on a whole different level. While most old-school gangsters were steering clear of crack because it was too wild and unpredictable, the Chambers Brothers ran straight into that chaos and built an empire out of it. And once they got in, they flipped the entire Detroit drug game on its head. They were bringing in insane amounts of money, like $250 million a year at their peak. And what makes it even crazier is that they came from absolutely nothing. We're talking dirt poor, deep south, barely making it kind of beginnings. Back in Marianna, Arkansas, life was tough in ways most people can't even picture. The Chambers family had 16 people crammed into a tiny cabin, no real space, barely enough food, and definitely no luxuries. They were born into poverty, raised on survival, and grew up in a place where racism wasn't hidden. Confederate flags, old school hate, and a system built to keep black folks at the bottom. And in that kind of environment, there's no safety net. If something happened, you were on your own.
It was a real hotbed. Racism was a real hotbed. Even at one time, one of my brothers was walking up the road. I'm in a little small town called Lee Range, Arkansas. A white guy and his friend was riding a motorcycle, actually deliberately ran over my brother. And nothing was dead. But that was the type of stuff that we could expect back.
But see, the Chambers Brothers weren't the type to just sit back and accept that life. They learned early that nothing was going to be handed to them, so they started taking matters into their own hands. As kids, they were already getting it how they could, stealing wallets at their family's juke joint, finessing grown men out of money at the pool table while standing on wooden crates.
Your family also had a club down there that was
correct.
What did they call it? A club or juke joint? What did they call it?
A juke joint, cafe.
When their parents split and the juke joint shut down, most kids would have seen that as a dead end. But not Larry, Wiley, BJ, and Otis. For them, it was just fuel, just a reason to level up. Larry, the oldest, was the muscle. His presence alone made people think twice. Wiley had done time in the military and worked as a mailman. He tried the straight and narrow but got pulled into the life eventually. BJ was the smooth operator. The dude could charm anybody. He knew how to talk, how to think on his feet, and how to make moves without making noise. And Otis, the youngest, was always trying to prove himself. Together, they had a chemistry that couldn't be touched. They weren't the biggest guys in the room, but once they walked in, you knew who was in charge. Now, out of all the Chambers brothers, Larry was the wild one, the outlaw. the guy who never tried to play by the rules because in his mind, the rules were made to be broken.
But Willie was kind of known as the one that was kind of getting in trouble, in and out of jail. Like,
that was Larry. That was my oldest brother. They called Larry Marlowe.
While his brothers dipped their toes into legit work, at least for a minute, Larry jumped straight into the deep end of the street life. There was something about that rush, the thrill of doing what everyone else was too scared to try, that pulled Larry in like a magnet.
It was just like, I'm done. I'm not going in this field no more, chopping no kites for nobody. You know what I'm saying now? And just took off. By him not having a game plan, just looking at his criminal record, he was doing a lot of break-ins at that time to survive.
And sure enough, it caught up with him. One Christmas Eve, Larry pulled a job that went sideways. He got locked up. And for most people, that would have been the end of the story, but not Larry. Just a week later on New Year's Eve, the man pulled off a prison escape, but he didn't stop there. He went right back to the streets and started hitting jewelry stores like nothing had changed. That kind of heat doesn't go unnoticed. And before long, the law caught up with him again. This time, they threw the book at him. 40 years. But even prison couldn't contain his energy. Larry broke out more than once, each time with that same fire in his eyes. He was untamed, unpredictable, but all wildfires burn out eventually. And after one final capture, it seemed like Larry was down for good. Then something unexpected happened. His case got overturned by the state Supreme Court. Just like that, he was out, a free man again. He tried to walk the straight line back home, but old habits die hard. Within no time, he was back to robbing stores, caught again this time, thanks to someone he thought was loyal. But then, that second stint behind bars changed Larry. The wildness didn't just disappear, it evolved. He swapped out the chaos for clarity, took up yoga, meditation. He got disciplined, focused. The same guy who used to break out of prisons now became a leader inside them. He stopped being just a menace and turned into someone other inmates looked up to. The mind that once plotted high-stakes heists was now strategizing for something bigger, where it all started. Meanwhile, outside those prison walls, Billy Joe Chambers and the rest of the brothers were trying to leave the past behind. Life in Arkansas was going nowhere. Farming barely kept food on the table, so Billy Joe made a move. Detroit, he was chasing opportunity. And at first it looked like he found it. He got into the marijuana game, made some money, tasted a little success.
I eventually ran away.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I eventually ran away at the age of 15. To the young lady house that I had met in Detroit.
You never really been around drugs?
No.
Things of that nature. So how did you get introduced to the drug game?
Well, the young lady that I had came and stayed with, her moms and their family was into drugs.
But success has a funny way of making you greedy. Then crack hit the streets and everything changed. Billy Joe didn't jump in head first. He watched, he studied, and what he saw was mind-blowing. Fast cash, huge demand, low supply. Crack was taking over, and the dealers already in the game were making a killing. With the help of a family friend who opened a few crucial doors, Billy Joe and his brothers made their move. And while a lot of old-school hustlers stayed away, scared of what the crack epidemic could do, the Chambers brothers weren't afraid. They were built for chaos. They weren't part of Detroit's usual crime scene, which actually gave them an edge. No one saw them coming. Just a bunch of country boys from Arkansas, that's what people thought, until they weren't. Their crack empire was a full-blown machine. It moved fast, grew faster, and left nothing but devastation in its wake. BJ turned something as simple as a car wash and a corner store into high-functioning hubs of drug operations. On the surface, they looked like regular businesses, but behind the scenes, crack and weed were flying off shelves like candy. His plug, Big Terry Colbert, kept the product rolling in non-stop, and BJ had a tight-knit circle of family and loyal friends running the day-to-day. But the real power move was the manpower. Word started to spread back in Arkansas. Folks were hearing about how easy it was to make money in Detroit. All you had to do was link up with the Chambers crew. And just like that, the migration began. Over 300 people from their hometown and nearby areas packed up and headed north, turning what started as a hustle into a full-blown drug.
Now that's crazy. They said 300 people from their family and hometown headed this way just to sell drugs. Headed to Detroit, Michigan just to sell drugs. 300 people. Not to come work at the plant. To sell drugs. And the Chamber Brothers was big. But they didn't run the city. There was not one drug crew that ran the city. They all had big names. but they didn't run the city. But just to think, the Chamber brothers recruited 300 people at one time to come sell drugs. That's a lot of people, man. That's a small company, man. Damn.
Dynasty, and at the center of it all was BJ. Dude was barely 5'5", but when he spoke, people listened. He was the brain, the strategist, the one who saw crack not just as a drug but as a business opportunity, and business was booming. Between 1983 and 1988, the Chambers brothers were running an estimated 300 crack houses in Detroit, and they were making up to $250,000 a day.
What do you feel like the most y'all ever brought in a day?
Well, we had got to a point where we was making at least $250,000 per day, every day.
Damn.
Every day.
They treated the drug game like a Fortune 500 company.
$250,000 a day. Easy back in the 80s. Easily back in the 80s. $250,000 a day.
Workers had to follow strict rules. There was a clear chain of command, and they even had marketing tricks. 2-for-1 deals, loyalty discounts. If you were a broke addict trying to get high on a budget, the Chambers brothers had a deal for you. But while they were living it up, riding flashy cars, wearing designer fits, dripping in gold, their customers were falling apart. The neighborhoods they controlled were crumbling under the weight of addiction and violence. And even though the brothers started off as underdogs, the kind you root for in the beginning, it became clear they weren't heroes in this story. They were kings in a crumbling kingdom, and the streets were bleeding because of it. Then 1986 hit and tragedy followed. Their younger brother, Little Joe, died, and the funeral was lavish, dramatic, a final send-off that screamed drug money, limousines, designer suits, everything first class. After burying him, the brothers returned to Detroit with more recruits and a renewed hunger to push harder than ever. But by now, they were too loud, too flashy, too bold. The feds had their eyes on them. They had become the kind of crew that couldn't move without being noticed. And here's where it all started to crumble. What took them down wasn't some brilliant DEA sting operation, it was their own ego. Larry's ex-girlfriend, Patricia Middleton, flipped. She gave law enforcement the blueprint of the operation, the ins and outs of how the whole empire worked. But even with that, it might have taken longer to bring them down, if it wasn't for one fatal mistake. Larry and his top guy, Jack Frost Jackson, got cocky. They started recording themselves, on camera, counting wads of cash, showing off ridiculous amounts of jewelry, walking through homes that looked like mini mansions.
I told you that's like our rappers back in the day.
We can give it to the poor.
They thought they were bulletproof, but those tapes were gold for the prosecution. The brothers had filmed their own downfall, and they didn't even know it. By the time 1992 rolled around, the party was officially over. The streets that once echoed with whispers of the Chambers brothers' power were suddenly silent, and the feds were kicking down doors. BJ and Otis got picked up. Willie was still out here playing it clean, rocking his Postal Service uniform when they came for him. Larry had already been locked down for a minute, but this time he wasn't just another inmate. He was the top name on the indictment. The cops hit them hard. When they raided their stash spots and properties, they scooped up about $1 million in cold hard cash and enough jewelry to make a rapper jealous. Add to that 68 cars, 250 firearms, and an extra $500K stashed in another corner of the empire. In total, they walked off with 41 luxury whips. Detroit Police Chief William Hart stepped up to the mic, calling it a major win in the so-called war on drugs. But here's the thing, Hart himself got exposed not long after for embezzling a smooth $2 million from the department. He ended up doing 10 years behind bars. Flashback to October 1988. That's when the trial started. The Chambers brothers, along with 10 of their closest soldiers, were all hit with charges ranging from conspiracy to straight-up tax evasion. But what really made jaws drop were the witness statements. People told horror stories about Chambers enforcers throwing folks out of windows or crushing their hands if they were caught tasting the product. Some witnesses got scared off, or worse, but it didn't matter. The walls were already closing in. And while all this was happening, another tragedy struck the family. David, the oldest Chambers.
There used to be stories about them being brutal to their own people. They used to beat their own people half to death. The people that they recruited back home from Arkansas, man, they said they used to put them through hell. They used to treat them like POWs, man. Like they really had rules. That's where they got the Carter from. Like how strict it was. They used to write rules on the wall and make them guys recite it and memorize it.
Chambers' brother passed away from AIDS complications in '87. Just months later, federal indictments came flying in, Larry got picked up again, and just like that, the dynasty started crumbling. For all their flash, fast money, and fly lifestyle, it didn't end like a movie. It ended like real life. All four brothers ended up behind bars. Larry and BJ got hit the hardest with the kingpin charge, that federal sledgehammer reserved for the top dogs. Larry got life. BJ was facing 50, Willie got handed 21, and Otis walked away with 27. But the story didn't stop there. Willie got out in 2007 after nearly 2 decades inside. BJ, who'd caught a lucky break when his kingpin charge was thrown out in '91, had his sentence reduced to 27 years. He served 23 of those and walked out of prison in July 2010. 48 years old and stepping into a world that barely remembered the name Chambers. The game had changed, the blocks had changed, and the throne they once sat on had long been claimed by someone else. The money was burned through or confiscated. The cars seized. The fear they inspired faded. What was left were old legends floating through the air like smoke in a half-lit room. They were still talked about, especially Larry, who remains locked up deep into his 60s. He's the last one left inside. Meanwhile, the others, Willie, BJ, and Otis, are out here living low-key, each of them carrying the weight of what they once were. Their story made it to American Gangster, turned into a modern cautionary tale. Their story also ended up inspiring one of the most iconic films of the early 90s, New Jack City. And behind that story was Barry Michael Cooper, a former journalist turned screenwriter who had his finger on the pulse of what was happening in Black America at the height of the crack era. Cooper was capturing a movement, documenting the raw and painful reality of the crack epidemic as it ripped through communities, especially in places like Harlem. That experience shaped everything he brought to the screen. New Jack City wasn't just another crime movie. It had grit, it had soul, it had truth. Wesley Snipes played Nino Brown, a ruthless drug kingpin dripping in charisma and menace. And Cooper didn't stop with New Jack City. He followed it up with Sugar Hill in 1994, another crime drama that again featured Snipes, this time diving into the complex lives of 2 Harlem brothers trying to escape the drug game. That same year, he dropped Above the Rim, a gritty basketball drama starring a young Tupac Shakur, where the line between dreams and the drug trade blurred once again. Together, these 3 films became known as Cooper's Harlem Trilogy, a cinematic deep dive into the streets of New York during a time when the American dream looked a lot like a gold chain and a pager. What made Cooper's work hit so hard was his ability to weave literary finesse with street knowledge. He could quote Hemingway and Dostoevsky, then turn around and write dialogue that sounded like it was lifted straight from a Harlem dice game. Critic and filmmaker Nelson George once said Cooper was translating an entire world onto the big screen. He wasn't glamorizing the drug game. He was showing all of it. The hunger, the violence, the heartbreak, the hustle. He painted a picture of young black men chasing fast money, not because they wanted to be criminals, but because in that era, in those neighborhoods, options were slim and survival was everything. Cooper once said, "I wanted to detail their voices, the way the hustlers talked," and even likened his work to The Great Gatsby, only this time the mansions were crack houses and the green light at the end of the dock was a gold medallion hanging from a rope chain. And it all started with his journalism. In the mid-1980s, his groundbreaking piece, Kids Killing Kids, shook up the media world. Published in The Village Voice, the article exposed how teenagers, some as young as 13, were deep in the drug game, making thousands a week, rocking designer clothes, flipping beepers, and riding around with cell phones back when they were still a luxury. That's where the term New Jack came from. Cooper took it from the streets and turned it into a whole cultural wave. That article changed everything. Just weeks after it dropped, Cooper was flying first class to meet none other than Quincy Jones. He was brought on to help rewrite a script about Harlem drug lord Nicky Barnes. But Cooper flipped the story on its head. He brought it into the crack era and created a new character, Nino Brown. The rest was history. New Jack City exploded onto the scene, and black cinema would never be the same. Barry Michael Cooper would pass away on January 21st in Baltimore at the age of 66, and while he's gone, his legacy is still loud.
Oh man, that brought back some memories, man. New Jack City was one of my joints, man. What about y'all? Did y'all used to like New Jack City? How did y'all like this video? Y'all want me to do more videos like this? Let me know. I want to thank y'all for tuning in. And till next time, peace.
Des Move.